We open doors for people. We introduce them to people they've never met before. We try to follow a path and have goals and dreams and try to achieve that as a collaboration with your client.
This is Catch a Break, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood, conceived by Catchlight Films. Whether you are looking to work in film or television or new media, it's all production and it's all entertainment. Maybe you are already in the business, but looking to make a change, shift your focus, explore a new area. This is for you too. In each episode, Catch a Break brings you a panel of top experts currently working in the business for conversations you won't hear anywhere else. And we'll provide you with bonus materials you can get your hands on and sink your teeth into. We'll give you samples of paperwork and forms you need to be familiar with, video tutorials, exclusive resources that will all help with your success. The presenting sponsor of this episode is the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. If you are producing content, call Extreme Reach. This episode is also sponsored by vetyourcrew.com, a global database of entertainment professionals geared toward collaboration and inclusion. Think of it as a global address book for crew, which also has an interactive calendar to show when you're available, and a robust search engine to help you find and hire exactly who you're looking for. Go to vetyourcrew.com to sign up. You can find us at catchabreakpodcast.com and all the podcast providers. I am your host, Julie Harris Walker. You may know me from the podcast The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood, or even the Kiss My Age show. But today, the focus is on you and how we can help you to catch a break. Welcome to Catch a Break, and the episode I'm calling Call My People, the episode on representation. Today we're going to talk about agents and managers. What are they? What is the difference? Do you need one? And which one? And how does it all work? We're going to walk you through this from several different perspectives and sort it all out. So first on our panel, we're going to look at this from the perspective of the people who hire. Representing production executives and producers, we have Jeanette Volturno, who you have heard from before in this podcast. She's one of the founders of Catchlight Film and head of production at Blumhouse. Hello, Jeanette.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And today we also have Jessica Milanofi, who is an independent producer and another founder of Catchlight Films. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi.
So let's start with you. What is your relationships with agents and managers, and how do you manage that process?
So agents and managers are kind of my first line of defense, because as a producer, there's so much content out there, especially now, that you need to be aware of in terms of short films that are on YouTube and Vimeo, and what's going on the festival circuit, and new writers that you might not be aware of, and new voices that are coming up in these independent and social media channels and all of that kind of stuff. So to be able to weed through all of that content on my own would be literally impossible. There's just too much of it. So to find an agent that I really respect their taste, or a manager who has a great roster of genre-specific clients, for example, that I can go to with a project and say, hey, this is what I need. I either need a writer who kind of has the tone of a serial killer movie, and they can execute great characters and dialogue, and then have them send me 3 people, or I can read hundreds of samples on my own and try to wade through all of that, and there's just not enough time in the day to do the latter.
So it's kind of a gatekeeper, a stamp of approval. You know the people you're getting are vetted and legit.
It's the same thing as like when we were talking about getting your first job and all of those positions that say agency experience required. It's that badge of you've been through the trenches, you've been vetted, you're quality people, and you're somebody to pay attention to. And that's not to say that the people who don't have representation aren't, because there are great writers. I'm working with a writer right now who's not currently represented. There are great people out there that don't have representation, but it just makes my job a little bit easier to go through those channels.
From where you're sitting, what is the difference between an agent or a manager?
This is a gross generalization, but I think agents are fantastic when you really need to cast a wide net quickly, because they tend to have more clients than managers. So when I'm looking for that open directing assignment, I can call an agent and say, I need somebody who fits these qualities, and they'll send me 10 people immediately that I can look at. When I'm looking for something that's a little bit more out of the box, I find that some managers tend to have a little bit more of a holistic approach to what they show their clients, and because of that, you get a bit more variety in the types of voices sometimes that you hear. And those managers are really invested in working very, very closely with some of those clients, so they can really give you very specific feedback on that client's strengths and where that client might need a little bit of extra support.
Now, if you're looking at putting projects together, we've heard that term about packaging. Like, what does that mean? And are those the people who are helping you do that?
So I'm actually doing that right now with UTA. I have a project where the writer was not represented. I'm not represented, but the other two producers on the project are represented as writers by UTA. So in that case, UTA represented all four of us as a package, and they were the ones that sent out the script and helped us find our financier. So now we're in the process of looking for our director. So we're doing an open call, and it's what's called an open directing assignment. And so the first thing that we do is call all of the agents and managers that we know have great genre clients. In this case, it's a horror movie. So we're going out to very specific agents that we know work in that space and saying, here's what we're looking for, here's when we're shooting, who do you have that's available and interested in doing this kind of film? And it's great because we get all these incoming calls from other people at the agency because they talk to their colleagues. And so you cast this really wide net and instantly get a ton of exciting people to look at that you might not have been aware of before.
Now, are there different types of, say, agents? I've heard lit agents. Are there different agents for producers, different agents for directors, or do people represent all kinds of people?
I work most closely with lit agents, and they represent usually writers and directors. Producers can also be represented, and of course you have talent agents. So I work with everybody in all of those different capacities because there is a lot of crossover. You know, every once in a while you have an actor who's represented by a talent agent, but that actor really wants to get into directing. So you might get a call from a talent agent about that, or you have, other kinds of crossovers. There are a lot of comedy writers especially who also have a talent agent. And sometimes people have a feature agent and also a TV agent. So you can see it gets pretty complicated where you might have 5 or 6 people ultimately on the team for one person.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. And then there's also, I'm going to move to you, Jeanette, there's what we call below the line agents.
Yes.
And those are the people you would work with, I imagine.
Yes. So we're recoining that to behind the camera.
Okay.
So below the line.
Well, that makes it clearer to understand.
When I was line producing, I started cultivating my relationships with agents back then for DPs, production designers, costume designers, editors, sometimes special effects, sometimes makeup, sometimes hair, really the department heads that are in there. It became a lot easier when I went in-house and people would call me because they knew that we had a project that was announced in the trades and that we would be looking for crew. We don't always use agents. Sometimes the director will come with particular department heads that they want to work with and they'll have the first crack at it, or sometimes I'll have a few people in mind that have the right personality, the right talent, the right vision, and the availability that I'll want to put in front of the director first before we throw the net a little wider. But we've met some really amazing people by taking general meetings and meeting them and then keeping them in mind for, then it's really about like the right time and the right place, right? Finding that time and the schedule and the project that fits everybody. But that to me is the fun part, is discovering someone through like general meetings and stuff. I don't know how did you, like, Jess, cultivate your relationships with your agents? Because for me it was just coming up through the ranks and then being the person in house that they called to see if we had coming up.
Yeah, I think most of my closest relationships are the people that I was an assistant with. So when my boss would call their boss and then we'd set our drinks afterwards and we'd go and chit chat, and like those are still the people that I talk to the most because we all grew up together. And then, yeah, it definitely got easier when I was really looking to package projects and I had the ability to hire their clients. It's much easier to get a call back when you have that work to offer, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a perspective on how people get those agents or managers?
I think sometimes it comes from working with a producer. I think that there are, like I said, when I was younger and working as an assistant, I wasn't necessarily going to get calls back from agents and I wasn't going to get to work with their top clients as much as I had my list of all of the Oscar winners that I wanted to work with,
Give me Tom Hanks on the phone.
Yeah, no, he's not returning my calls. So you start working with, unrepresented writers and cultivating those relationships. And the hope is you can find somebody and really invest in them and find multiple projects to do together. And then at a certain point, I've had those people where I try to help them get an agent. Using my contacts and making those introductions.
Same for me. For a few of the department heads that we've worked with in the past that have been people that we found for one means or another. Either they were from a foreign country and moved over here and gotten into the union and sort of moved up and had been undiscovered through one of the agents, or out of film school, or a friend of a friend, whatever. We found somebody, and we'll do a movie, and I'll get a phone call or two from agents afterwards saying, hey, I saw this film and I saw this person, and I looked them up because I really liked the work that they did in that. Would you work with them again? Do you recommend them? Are they represented anywhere? And so we've been able to get a few people represented that way after seeing the work that they've done on a project.
My assistant actually helped another one of my former assistants get an agent because she had been working as a development assistant and went off and directed her first feature and didn't know what to do with it, didn't have an agent, didn't have anyone to help her make the sales. So my current assistant at that point really made a lot of introductions to her at all the different agencies, and that's how she found her representation.
So it really comes down to networking.
Totally.
Great. Well, let's bring Kailey Marsh into this conversation now. I'm going to read you her little bio. Kailey Marsh is a literary manager at Brillstein Entertainment Partners, and prior to joining Brillstein earlier this year, Kailey ran her own independent management company. Kailey is also the founder of The Bloodlist, a best-of list of unproduced dark genre screenplays and pilots. Welcome, Kailey. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to ask you, what was your first job, and how did you get it?
My first job out of college, or while I was still in college, was actually an internship, which I'll consider a job because
Sure.
It's where I got all of my experience, and it led me into my first paid position. I worked at this company called Osla, which is Taka Chise's company, and they did like Ringu and Ju-on, like Ring, Grudge, Dark Water, Shutter, all of the J-horror movies. And so he was a very prolific Japanese producer, and that was during not the last writer's strike, but the writer's strike before, in end of 2007 into 2008. So I was there, and I was there for like 4 or 5 months, and I was still in school, so I was kind of like, oh, this is fine, that I'm not getting paid, and I'm learning so much, oh my God. And then at the time, the VP, Erin Eggers, was like, hey, do you want to get a job or at least another internship? Where are your interests? And at the time, I lived next to Paramount, and I was like, I'd love to work on the Paramount lot if there's any horror producers that you know. And she knew this guy named Steven Schneider, who had recently joined the industry but was known for being like a genre guru and had encyclopedic knowledge of horror. And I was like, that's cool. So I started interning for him, and my first week on the job, he had found Paranormal Activity. So he had a deal with Jason Blum, who now everyone knows, but at the time it was not the case. But I learned a lot, so I interned there, but I was there around the clock, definitely pulling crazy hours for an intern. And then finally they made me a pseudo assistant, and I was with them for about 1.5 years, and that was during, Paranormal Activity, and then into production on this movie called The Tooth Fairy. And then after that, I started working for 2 managers at Circle of Confusion, which is also a big management and production company. And I worked for Noah Rosen and Ken Freeman, and it was there that I was like, being a manager seems awesome. I think I should do that.
And here you are.
And here I am.
So has horror always been your jam?
Yeah, I've always loved horror. Yeah.
That's great. Now, talk about The Bloodlist.
Yes. So when I was over at Circle of Confusion, I had started a tracking board called Tracula. Tracking boards. Tracking boards were really popular when I was an assistant. They're not really that popular anymore, though I guess that assistants use them, but not the way we did. We were tracking scripts, and this was still not to date myself too much, but when you were printing out scripts and bratting them, and it was a lot harder to exchange information. So my tracking board was specifically for horror fans, and we were tracking horror movies that are at the festival, or that anyone could get their hands on a screener for, or confidential scripts or whatever. So I was meeting a bunch of executives by hosting these screenings, and then at these screenings they would ask what I was reading, and at the time I was reading Circle of Confusion clients, and not all of them were genre. So I opened it up to the board, hey, I'll make a list of the scripts that everyone likes, and I called it the Bloodlist at the top, and it was just the script names, not even log lines. And I ended up quitting a week or 2 after, and one of my bosses called and was like, hey, you're on tracking B, and I'm like, I didn't know what that was. And so basically, essentially, my list had gotten poached, which means it was sent to other tracking boards, and other assistants were passing it around, and then these scripts that were on it became scripts that you have to read as an assistant. And then, the next year, people were like, are you going to do that again? And I was like, oh, well, if you want me to.
It's a thing now.
Yeah, and I'm like, a decade later, I'm still doing it. So, but yeah, I really do think that the reason why the Bloodlist has had staying power is because from the very beginning, it was something that people wanted. It wasn't like I just was like, hey, here's this thing. It was almost like it was like by request. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be the person who was running the tracking board that focused on horror.
So now it's the place where people want their script to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely basically has a lot of eyes on it, especially in the feature space. I've been putting pilots on it for the past couple of years. The way that the pilot market works versus feature specs is so different that it's usually harder to get pilots on because they're not necessarily as widely read, because that's not how you go out with a pilot. You usually package it and are more concerted effort to different places that you're sending it to. But yeah, in the feature space, people look forward to it, and then it gets a ton of press. So it's like, for a lot of these writers getting on the list, and even some of the reps, it's the first time they've been on Deadline, a Variety, Hollywood Reporter. So it's just like an accolade that also, because of the timing of it, like a month and a half later, the Blacklist comes out. So there's usually a lot of crossover of scripts being on the Bloodlist to the Blacklist because of the proximity of people reading it during this short amount of time.
That is pretty cool. Now, do the submissions all come through reps, or can people submit directly?
So on the annual Bloodlist, it does function very much like the Blacklist. Like, executives vote. I've always been a rep since I've started it. Like, I was an assistant the first year, but after that, I've been a manager for the most part. And so, reps can't vote, writers can't vote. It's just the executives who get the ballot. And so, they'll get the ballot and they get to vote for their 6 most liked dark genre screenplay: horror, thriller, sci-fi, dark drama, dark comedy. If you think it should be on the Bloodlist, it should. It's not that serious. I'm like, if people are like, should this kind of script? I'm like, use your best judgment. Like, does it belong on the Bloodlist? If not, then don't submit it. But yeah, so it's just executives vote. And then, it gets tallied on my site, and then we contact the reps. Which brings me to why I created Fresh Blood, which is a free screenwriting initiative on the website. I know it's expensive for a lot of writers to submit to these screenplay competitions. I'm a judge for a lot of these competitions. I know that there's a lot out there. And so I just wanted to have an outlet that people could submit their screenplay for free. It's a lottery, and the way that basically my readers and I decide, we try to read everything, but if we start reading it and the first page is awful, I don't know, it gets tossed to the side sometimes.
If it's terrible, you don't have to read it.
If it's terrible. This year we got through all the submissions. I probably read, after like 3 rounds of reading, I probably read like 40 or 50. And then from there, we narrow it down to 10. So there are lots of other scripts we liked, but for a lot of reasons, like, we put 10 on the Fresh Blood list, and then once again, it's 100% free for these writers, but we host their screenplay on the site, on Bloodlist. So you can view all of the Fresh Blood scripts on the website.
Are the writers on Fresh Blood repped?
The Fresh Blood writers are not repped. They're all unrepresented. That's the goal of getting these writers out there, is that so they can be represented and their scripts can go on to be optioned. This year, one of the writers was repped, but I didn't know that till we called a fact check about it. On the actual annual Bloodlist, most of them are repped because in order for their screenplay to be out in circulation and in town that much, it's usually sent out by a rep of some sort.
Okay, great. So from your perspective, can you kind of break down for us the difference between an agent and a manager?
It's weird because I feel like there are so many similarities these days with agents and managers, just because of how entrepreneurial every person has had to be in their business because of the business changing as fast and as much as it has in the past decade that I've been in it. The number one difference between agents and managers is that managers can produce. Stemming back from that, if you're going to be producing a project, it's usually something that you've either come up with the idea with your client or been extremely heavy in the development process with them. I'm close with my clients in the sense that I like to know everything they're doing and be helpful along the way. Agents, depending on each agent, because each agent and each agency is different, can be as hands-on as they want. I usually look to agents as more of a soundboard of, hey, we did all this work, what do you think? I'm not coming to them every step of the way. I've been doing this a long time. My clients and I have a rapport. But I do really rely on agents to be my partners in terms of going out with scripts, sending it out to the town and sending it out to producers, or packaging and ideas for packaging, especially if they're at an agency that has a lot of talent or big producers or big directors that we want to target specifically. Like, they're way more helpful at getting one of their pieces of talent attached than I would be as an outsider. And so I think that we both definitely have our strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, I tend, like, managers, the way I see it, being one, is that we're the first stop and agents are like the second, in terms of I am usually on the same page as my clients, and then we'll go to the agent with the situation or the issue or the exciting piece of news or whatever. But that's just because agents tend to have a much bigger roster than managers, and their time is spread way more thin, and that's just how it is.
Are you both making the sale, or is the agent making the sale?
If you want to nickel and dime it, I feel like we're both making the sale. I feel like sometimes I'll be like, oh man, like I did that, just knowing that every step I made is why it eventually sold. But in terms of transactions, managers are not supposed to deal with money. We're not supposed to deal with negotiations because we're not signatory. And that's like an agent thing. Agents negotiate, but they always, agents will always be like, what do you think, Kailey? And I'll be like, that works. Or,
to work together on a deal, but they're negotiating the final
Yeah,
price.
in terms, because people are like, oh, don't agents get people jobs? I'm like, yes, because they are given a lot more information and because it's such a high volume thing. But of course, managers are making sales and selling stuff all the time, getting clients jobs. We're just not being the one to negotiate it, or, that it's basically just negotiations that we're not handling. But we're privy to it and involved in the whole process.
So does a writer need a manager and an agent?
I think each writer should figure that out on their own. I mean, I think having a manager first is an easier way to get an agent. I feel like it's very hard to get agents' attention. And a lot of the incentive of an agent signing a client with me is that they like me and they want to work with me and they want to share a client with me, because I talk to my clients' agents a lot. Mm-hmm. I probably talk to my clients' agents much more than the client talks to their agents. So it has to be someone who I really like and who the client likes. But it's definitely a team effort, because that's the thing, is it's important if you do have an agent and a manager and of course an attorney, just to all be operating together. Otherwise,
it takes
there's
a
no point.
village.
Yeah, it's so hard to get anything done.
So at what point do you need representation, and then how do you get it?
Once again, everyone listening, like, each person's story is different. You never know who you're going to meet or how you're going to meet them or when you're going to meet them. I feel like it's always better to be over-prepared. If I meet with someone and they're like, I'm a director. And I'm like, what have you directed? And they're like, oh, well, I'm working on something. I'm like, then say that you're about to direct something. Don't present yourself in a way that is inaccurate to someone who reps writers and directors for a living. And so I hear a lot of people, especially younger people, kind of like shotgunning, like, oh yeah, this and that, whatever. I'm like, I make money from you getting jobs. So if it's realistic that you can get a job, we can work together. If I see some form of talent, if you do a short and I'm obsessed with that, and you're short and I want to send it to everybody, that's great. If your short is only okay, but everyone else loves you, I'm not the person for you. You should find someone who you click with. So I feel like a lot of it is, having this one piece of material or two pieces or whatever. If it's a screenplay, I think if you have one great screenplay, I would automatically start writing another one, because if one thing is great, people are going to want to know what else you have. And yeah, if you're a director, I would just say, like, be directing stuff, like, even if it is shorts or even Instagram videos, I don't care. Like, when I meet with directors and I don't get any sense from their social media or anything that they're a director, I'm like, people are so short-sighted these days and people are given so much information on a daily basis. You kind of have to tell people exactly what you want them to think you are.
And show them. Especially as a director, I'm like, just show me you're a director, Because, like, for instance, I have a writing client and she has been a storyboard artist for a long time and I just think she's great and she wants to direct her next movie. And I'm like, let's do it. Because I believe that you could be a director, and she's assertive and she just has the mentality for it, and she's been around a bunch of directors and shadowed and everything. And I'm like, let's do it. but only because I worked with her very closely on her script and know that she's pretty much the perfect person to direct this movie. And yes, we could get someone who's directed a feature, but like, does that make them more qualified to direct her movie? I don't know. And, you know, once again, that goes into the fact that I've been managing for over 7 years, and I can kind of tell if someone will be a good director because I've represented them, I've been on set, I've produced stuff. So I guess it's the same thing for new writers and directors starting out, is like, where do you see yourself in the industry? Are you able to pitch yourself? Do you have a body of work behind you? And if so, then I think you're ready to have a manager who can help guide you and take you to the next level. But that being said, and I think it's important to say, is it's extremely hard to secure a manager. You know, we have small rosters, meaning most managers have under 20 clients, and even 20 clients, it's a lot. You have to be so in love with the person you're representing, and also the creative has to be in love with who's representing them and feel confident that that person is pitching them in the way that they see themselves and their career going.
When you take on someone, do you sit with them and sort of say, like, here's where you want to go, and here are the things that we should do to get you to that place, and, you know, kind of work with them through all of that? So is that a big, almost like life coaching in your career, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely super hands-on. I mean, I've spent plenty of weekends going line by line over a script with my clients, just making sure, you know, that it's exactly what they want it to be and what I've been promising the town if I've been soft pitching it to executives. Also, you know, from doing it for so long, like, I know what people respond to. You know, I know if you're in a meeting with someone and they're like super excited about an idea, but I've read the script and I don't think that it's the idea that they think, then we should do more work on it. So, you know, I guess it's...
But you also get into like the personality and how they're in a room and like all
absolutely.
of that, like all of the other stuff beyond their talent of what they put on the paper or what they put on screen, like all of the other stuff. Because that's what I feel like a manager kind of does a little bit more than an agent, gets into like you as a person and your confidence and how you portray yourself and, you know,
like how to pitch in the room.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, each client needs more or less, you know. I've definitely... I've represented a lot of my clients for a long time. Like half my roster I represented for 4, 5, 6 years. So I just have a certain rapport. With newer clients, it's definitely more challenging because I'm like, you know, I don't know. I kind of just say exactly what I want all the time. I've gotten a lot better now that I'm in my 30s. You know, it's really important how you carry yourself in a meeting. I've definitely had hard conversations with clients about like, hey, like they thought that you seemed pretty disinterested the entire meeting, but you weren't, right?
Yikes.
You know?
Yikes.
Like, so it's stuff like that. But of course, going into that scenario, the executive's calling me and being like, hey, like, I don't know if they seem that interested in it, but I really like them for the project. So then I have to go and be like, you know, it's just like taking notes. Like I have to go and kind of dilute the message, but find out what happened and then call the executive back and be like, they're super interested. Sorry, like their cat passed away or something. You know, like it's like having...
It's like a whole different skill from writing a script to pitching in a room has got to be.
Oh, yeah.
It's not an automatic transfer of skills.
Oh my God, it takes practice. Like I do practice pitches with my clients as often as possible. Some people don't prefer it. Like my more senior clients are just kind of like to wing it. I like to hear it. Like I like to hear the exact pitch that you're going to give the executive. It's the same reason why I care so much about my clients' screenplays is it's your name on the script. It's also my name on the script. Yeah. And it's my relationships that I've accrued over the years with goodwill of sending them great material over and over.
So and while
they'll, you know, people will be like, oh, it's taking so long to get a read. I'm like, it's been 3 days and I'll get that read for you. But if a person gives a fast read, it's just like knowing, it's just like your friends. It's like if you can get your friends to do something, but a stranger can't get them to do something. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So there's a lot of talk about branding and branding yourself as an artist. Is that important, and do you help people with that?
Definitely. Especially, I mean, I think branding is especially important now when everything, like even social media is your branding. I hate social media, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't help me out a lot, especially with building out Bloodlist. You know, I'm wearing my Bloodlist necklace now. I'm always wearing something Bloodlist because people have to constantly be reminded who you are.
Oh, you're drinking out of my branded mugs. Make no mistake. What's going on here?
Exactly. By the way. But yeah, it's the same thing as in writing because there's such a small amount of jobs. People are confused that there are a lot of jobs. There are a lot of jobs, but they're not really active. So people will be like, there's 700 open writing assignments. And I'm like, yeah, and this one was open when I was in 3rd grade. You know, it's like some of these aren't active. So there's such a small pot of jobs and everyone is trying to find specific people for those jobs. You know, I feel like I have a lot of horror writers, but I like that they're all very different from each other. And that's the thing too, is like horror, people say, oh, it's just a horror writer. I'm like, no, but like this person is really great with character and this one's really good with scares and this one is a writer-director and only wants to work on monster movies. It's like, you know, each person has their own little niche within the niche. But yeah, I mean, it's been immensely helpful for me to have created the Bloodlist before becoming a manager because I was able to sign a bunch of dark genre writers really early on. And while a lot of my clients don't write in the dark genre world, every executive that reaches out to me for something horror most of the time works in other genres as well, and I'm able to pitch my other clients or get other business going. And I like that I have become like the go-to person to talk to, or at least one of them in the horror space.
So I'm sure everyone listening is like, oh, how do I get on her roster? Like, how much churn do you have and how often do you even take on new clients?
It's very rare I take on new clients. Having had my own shop for almost 6 years, I basically was like barely getting through all the work I needed to get done every single day. I still feel that way. It was just my assistant like working in my living room and like us like pounding the pavement every day. I really like to spend a lot of time on each of my clients every day. And the more clients I have, the less time I have to spend on each person. And so, you know, it's kind of like, you know, if you do too many things kind of okay, you should just be doing like 1 or 2 things really, really well.
How much, when you're taking on new clients or considering new clients, how much of it is based on personality versus how much is based on the work?
Interesting question. I feel like because most of the time I am reading someone's material or watching someone's material before actually meeting them, I feel like I would, of course, say that the work is more important. Though I will say if I meet with someone, no matter how much I love their work and I don't get along with them, it's not going to work out. Especially because as a manager, of course, the goal is you're going to be with these people, you know, your creatives from the time that they start to the time that they finish, no matter how long that is. So it's just like any other relationship you wouldn't want to stay in if it wasn't necessarily perfect.
And how do you balance, I mean, there's kind of like this relationship triangle a little bit between representation and clients and execs and producers. And sometimes it gets a little contentious one way or the other because I know like as a producer, sometimes there's things that are asked of a writer where I'll go direct to the writer. And I know that's a big no-no for representation and I'll get my wrist slapped. But I also have this direct relationship with the client sometimes. So how do you kind of mediate that? And what are the reasons why there's a little bit of protection sometimes?
I always love for my clients to go through me, especially with executives and producers, just because it acts as a buffer. A lot of times, and this is not every case with every producer, but a lot of times producers will deal with a client directly because they're the weakest link in terms of agreeing to things. So you can get them to agree to do more work or settle on a dollar amount or, you know, make commitments that we as their reps don't necessarily feel like is the best for them. So I like if, you know, a client defers to me or his agents or whoever, you know, in a situation. And even if you are like best friends with one of my clients, I always like to be looped in on all the emails, CC'd, privy to information, because once I feel like I'm not as educated on something as the client, it's just going to create more work for everybody because everyone has to be on the same page and there has to be transparency or else there's misunderstandings and things take longer. And, you know, especially if money is exchanging hands, it's always best to deal with the reps because that's why we're here.
And once you do get signed, how do you be a good client? What do you hope that your clients will take away to make your life as a rep easier and by extension then making their own life easier as the client?
Oh man, these are really tough questions. Basically, this is my blanket statement. trust the people you're working with or don't work with them. Yeah. Know that they have your best interest at heart, or you shouldn't be working with them.
Trust that you're doing your job.
And trust that I'm doing my job. And also, I will be 100% upfront with someone if I think that they need to do something to make something better. So, the question of, is there anything I can be doing is a good one. But asking what I'm doing is a little bit disrespectful, because we've already had a conversation of what I'm doing. Asking to follow up with people or asking me to do specific stuff can be taken as a slight to me, who has already explained exactly when and how things are going to work out. It's good to be inquisitive. It's not good to be aggressive with your follow-ups. A lot of people will hit me up on social media. I think that's an inappropriate place to discuss business. That's a place I want to post pictures of my dog and my family, not a place I want to hear about your screenplay. With my clients, I have always given them instructions of what I want them to be doing. And, essentially, if your project is amazing, I know what I need to do. I need to get it made, or, get it sold and get it made and get it packaged, and just know that that's my goal, and we should be on the same page together.
It's a partnership. It's a two-way relationship.
Yeah, it's 100% a partnership. That's the thing. It's like, with like any other partner and any other thing, you want to know that you guys are in this together, and the whole goal is success for you.
And it may take longer than you think it's going to take.
Everything takes longer. Everything takes longer. If you sell a project today, you might get paid for it in the next 7 months, or maybe not. Or maybe the contract will take 3 months to negotiate. Or maybe, a sale is actually an if-come deal, which means you're not going to make any money until a network shops your project in the TV space. It's also incredibly hard to sell things because you have to get so many people to sign off on it, which is why your partners, your managers, and your agents are the people who you should be the easiest to deal with, because we're dealing with people who are much harder to deal with, and we have to convince them that you are the best person for the job, because we know that you are, but it's convincing other people who have to convince other people who have to convince other people to write a check.
You're all on the same side.
Yeah.
Okay, then what if they want to be a manager? How do you do that?
Being a manager is an extremely fulfilling job. It's also an extremely hard job, very multifaceted. You're dealing with a lot of personalities on a lot of different levels. The more successful people become, sometimes the harder it is to deal with them. Like I said, selling screenplays and getting people jobs is always an uphill battle. So just knowing that, if you want to be working pretty much 24/7, then you should be a manager.
That's a good way to go.
No, but if you want to be a manager, definitely target assistant positions that are in representation, whether that's at an agency where you can learn how to be a rep just in general, or at a management company. It's really hard when, people will come to me and say, I want to be a manager, but I have no management experience. I'm like, then get some, just get a little bit, just to see how people who are great at the job do their job, and to learn what to do and what not to do. Having recently had my own company and now working at Brillstein Entertainment Partners, which is an extremely prestigious management company, I do things very differently than a lot of other managers there, and I'm learning the pros and cons of how we all do business. And I think it's a really good way. Like I said, I've been managing over 7.5 years. I'm still learning. I imagine I'll still be learning when I've been managing for 20 years and 30 years. You're never not learning, especially when there's so much material and there's so much stuff out there. I feel like if you want to be a manager, just know that you have a lot of hats. You wear a lot of hats, and it's a lot of different jobs all melded into one.
Just so people know, what is the pay scale? How are managers paid?
Managers are paid 10%. That's across the board, but the standard is 10%. 10% of what they earn, and then they being the writer or director or creator. And same thing for agents. Agents make 10%, and this is not always the case, but 95% of the people I deal with pay 5% to their attorney. So you're essentially paying 25% out of whatever you earn, though I think it is worth mentioning that that is not a lot of money when someone is selling your screenplay, which is insanely hard to do. I see a lot of people get really hung up on this hypothetical money that they haven't actually gotten. And what I think the best writers and the best creators and the best clients are so thankful and so gracious when they make any kind of money, that they're happy to pay someone out. These people in your lives are working really hard so you can become successful, and so, you know, they can make money from that. Like, this is a job.
And to focus on what it is that you as a creator like to do, right? It takes that piece out that they don't need to hustle and work on negotiations. They don't need to go bang on doors and follow up and do all of that stuff. They can literally focus on the craft of what they want to focus on. So that makes it worthwhile.
And without them, would they even be making that money?
Right.
Who knows? But I mean, I feel like people, people that get short-sighted by quote paying people, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think it should be like in succession, everyone is happy. And yeah, I mean, I've never had a problem with clients ever wanting to pay out because they know that I've worked for it. You know, it's the same as anybody who works for anything. They deserve to be paid. But yeah, first and foremost, it's clearly making sure that the client is getting the right amount of money, and then from there we get paid.
Great. Kailey Marsh, thank you so much for being on our panel.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So now we are going to welcome Matt Birch to the podcast. Now, Matt is a partner of APA, which is Agency for the Performing Arts. It is a full-service agency, but we're going to focus on Below the Line today. And prior to that, he came up working in production for many years. So, Matt, I want to ask you, what was your very first job in this business, and how did you get it? I
love it. That's the best question. My first job in the business was I was a PA on a series of commercials. A friend referred me to a commercial producer. I was the big shot 2 weeks after arriving here. From all my friends, I received a call to PA on a bunch of El Pollo Loco commercials. Yes. And which series of events, first one was day one, they said, who can drive a 10-ton truck? Of course, I raised my hand, didn't even know what it was. Ended up picking up 100 live chickens, which I didn't know, out near Stevenson Ranch, and then was driving back. There was no Humane Society present at the time. And drove them all back to the stage where we unloaded all of those chickens. And let's just say it was a great education. I'll skip to the final day of the job where I was doing all the returns, returning the camera equipment, the walkies, everything that we rented for the show. And I was pulling into Raleigh Studios, and the guard gate waved me in, and I thought he was waving me into where he was standing. Ended up crashing into the guard's booth, taking the roof of the guard's booth off, and with everyone screaming at me. He was, I guess, directing me to what there is now called a truck entrance, and I thought my career was over. Ran inside to my producer Brenda, who was amazing, and wringing my hands, and I told her how, I said something happened, and you can keep my paycheck, and went through the litany.
Sorry.
So sorry. And she said, what happened? I said, come outside. So we went outside. All of Raleigh Studios was just watching the destruction that I created.
Which is, by the way, owned by Teamsters.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
The irony. You never got into $3.99.
Yeah, exactly. The irony. And I remember standing there, and I'm explaining to her, I'm sorry this happened, and you can fire me. And she said, Matt, and at the time the head of the studio was screaming at her because of what I did, and she just told them to be quiet. She turned and walked away with me. Come on, let's go back to the office. And she said, Matt, stop. She goes, this is why we have insurance. So I've always remembered this is why we have insurance and why we get insurance certificates when you're doing production. But that was my first foray into Hollywood.
And literally crashed in.
Yeah, I crashed in.
The most amazing part of that story is that you got a second job.
Exactly. I learned quickly. I was only told once in my whole career that I'd never work in this town again, and I felt like I had achieved. I was an assistant on a desk at a studio, and I thought I achieved something because someone screamed that at me on the phone and said it in a different way.
Like, I've made it.
Yeah, and it was the head of the studio. And then the irony is, a year later, I'm sitting in a production meeting with the former head of the studio, who was fired, as a producer on a film that I was production managing. And he was sitting right next to me and completely forgot the conversation, of course, that he told me I'd never work in this town again. So I thought it was just ironic how it all comes around, and, we're sitting side by side a year later.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's Hollywood.
It is Hollywood.
Yeah. That is awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the agency.
Okay.
First of all, how did you transition from production to being an agent?
I was, after many years of physical production, I was friendly with John Fury, who was running a small below-the-line agency called Montana Artists. And he, at the end of my contract, I was working, running physical production at an independent film company. At the end of the contract, we went out to dinner, and he called me the next day and said, hey, I was thinking you should come work for me. And I said, work for you? And he said, I mean, work with me. And I go, oh, work with you. I said, John, you're not talking about being an agent, are you? And he's like, and he knew exactly where I was going, and he kind of hemmed and hawed. And no, I mean, as an executive or under, labor commissioner laws, you have to be an agent. I go, John, I hate agents. And he said, that's why you'd be perfect for this. He said, you're the anti-agent. So it really started, he wanted me to run this company for a year. And through a series of events, he passed away. I took over the agency, and it's 9 years later. So
it stuck.
It stuck. It did. I really, really enjoyed it and do.
So your agency now reps across the board, above the line, below the line?
APA does. I run the department with my co-heads for physical production, and there's a lot of bleeding these days between the below the line and above the line. We have a lot of clients who are directing as well as writing, and so we kind of touch everything.
Okay, so earlier Jeanette was talking about she would call someone like you if she's looking to hire department heads for a film or something like that.
Exactly.
So let's talk about your side of that. Okay. How does that work from your perspective?
Well, I mean, typically we'll get a call, and it'll be from the head of network or studio or independent company, and looking for typically a line producer who can usually run a budget and a schedule for a project, whatever that may be. And we're really trying to do the casting from that start. We're trying to find the right people. If the buyer, as we would call them, doesn't know the producer we represent, it's something that we really want to impress why they should meet this person. And we try to be right. We're not always right, but you after this many years, you get to know who you're talking to on the other end of the phone. You understand their personalities, you understand, quite frankly, the spirit of what their company is trying to do. And you really try to make it, you're not trying to shoehorn a human being into a position, you're trying to find the right person. Because I look at the long game on everything, and you really want someone to do some repeat business and continue working. You don't really want a one-off and then have them not work together ever again. So
you're really matching competence and personality also.
Absolutely. I think personality, I think competence, for the most part, looking at Jeanette, she's worked with a lot of our clients. For the most part, competence is, it's a standard rule. You don't survive and continue to work this long, or I should say as long as my age, without having that competence. From there, everything else is gravy. Then who do you want to have in your family for 9 months to a year or 2 years, it depends. And the personality is extremely important. It's really what I look for with our clients these days. When we're signing people or people come to us, is we need something different because we know that will also sell.
100%. Yeah. I look at, there's traditional casting where you're casting the actors on the project. In my role as a head of production, I look at casting, I call it Match.com. I am casting the director of photography, the costume designer, the production designer, the editor, like all of the department heads. If they can't find a symbiotic way of working together and all have the same vision, it's not going to work.
Ever.
Yeah.
A nightmare.
Yes. So it really is. You're absolutely correct. It's really about the personality and are they the right fit together? Do they make magic together?
Right. And to your point, I mean, take a cinematographer, you won't be regarded or looked at from a company if you don't know what you're doing, first of all, at the level that we're working at here.
That's your table stakes.
Right, exactly. So from there, it's a buyer's market too. I mean, the people out there that are hiring our clients have many, many choices. And our job is to explain to them why, if they don't know this person, why they're so special, why they might work perfectly for this project. And you're trying to find common ground, really. Because it is a nightmare when you don't have people like that.
Now, I'm curious, because it's 2018, how conscious are you of the diversity mix of your roster and trying to make that happen on a set?
Well, in terms of me making it happen on the set, that's less my job now. But in terms of providing clients and the ability to meet clients like that, it has been, it's been primary for a decade, I'll be honest. I was never a person who wanted to run an agency was filled with 400 white men. And, and not to mention, almost every one of my bosses from day one until I stopped having a boss, a mini boss, have been women. And I think so I've always been a champion of finding cinematographers, editors, line producers, Right now, the line producers we have, and I'm really proud of our roster, but the female or minority producers we have, they're all working. And it is I was talking to one yesterday who got an incredible offer. She was very emotional on the phone, as I was, because we were both so happy about what happened. This wouldn't have happened 5 years ago for her. And part of my negotiation with the studio was, and it was a female executive I was negotiating with, I said, this person is not going to make less than so-and-so did, which is a gentleman who I don't represent, who produced a film earlier in the year for them. And there was silence, and then they said, you're right. And in turn, things are equalizing. We've got a long way to go, but they're equalizing a lot in terms of minority, diversity, all the hires that are not your typical people that look like me.
Do you think that it's like with Netflix and Amazon and all the streaming and everything, are you finding it hard to find qualified people to fill all of the things that are out there now?
Sure. Problem is this. The answer is yes. But the problem is this, is that you have, there is so much content, which means there is a watering down sometimes of qualifications. And this goes across the board to local hires in certain cities, where one day someone is a UPM and the next day they're producing. That's not how it works. I am biased because I worked my way up from the bottom. But I think when you do, for the most part, work your way up and cut your teeth and make your mistakes, that's how you become a better person or a better employee, whatever that may be. But to your point, yeah, it is hard. We all, I also run the agency differently, where we don't bulk up on clients. A lot of agencies do. But in terms of that, I'm trying to find the best people that people like. This goes to earlier what was said, just discussing management and clients. It doesn't help me or my agency to have unlikable people. And it's not that hard to find people that are likable. So whether that's a woman, a man, a purple person, or a green person, it doesn't matter. You're trying to match, but I think, to Jeanette's question, there's so much work out there that I fear the quality also is dropping in certain areas. And that, to me, I think is our biggest challenge right now, because there is so much content out there that we have to try to keep the level high.
Training people as fast as you possibly can.
Absolutely. But really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you train them. They have to trip and fall.
Takes time.
Yeah.
Do you take clients on that haven't done that skill before? Like, do you take people who are ready to level up?
No. What we do, no. Sorry, I didn't say that 3 times.
The answer is very decisive, I get it.
Was I speaking loud enough? No, what we do is take people who are transitioning. Let's say it's a supervising art director growing into a production designer. And that's a lot of what Jeanette in the past was hiring people that were ready to make that move, that, that didn't, quite frankly, carry a lot of baggage that maybe other people had. So there's a certain positions that have that, I'm almost there. It doesn't apply to all of them at all. I will take a unit production manager and work with them to be great producers. That is my primary goal when it comes to producers. But it's too busy to have projects. There's a handful of people that we really help out because we believe in them. But I could not, the amount of time in the day, it's just too short to be able to do that. People ask, when should you come in and look for representation?
That was my next question.
Oh, it's pretty clear when you need someone. If you are getting the accolades, whatever that may be or mean, if you're getting the attention for your work, if you're delivering as a producer projects under difficult financial circumstances, those are people that are ready. Those are people that just need the opportunity to succeed. So I would not suggest someone fresh out of film school who wants to be a cinematographer look for representation. Your representation would not be able to do anything for you. It really depends on the category when you're ready, but I think more than anything, earlier we were talking about writers, people who want to be writers should find jobs in writers' rooms. And what I say, and it was also my path, is you should be an assistant anywhere. It doesn't matter where, anywhere. Because you will learn, good or bad, what you should do and shouldn't do. And that's
100% learn from other people's mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Experience is valuable.
Oh yeah. No, I remember watching a lot of my bosses sputter and scream and yell, and I would just sit there quietly watching and realizing what that was all about. And it's really never about what happens. It's really about personalities, and it's about how you handle stress.
So you're taking notes on what not to do.
Absolutely. It's white noise, people like that. And to me, that was never effective. It's the old adage, you get more bees with honey than vinegar.
So generally speaking, when you're representing behind the camera people, as we're talking, is it really once they get to be a department head or they're about to be a department head?
Yeah, that's the right timing. Look, we always it's different. We have a mix of people that we used to go to Sundance, and this is many years ago. We'd recruit out of Sundance. Those are projects, and I'm saying that in a good way, where you're finding some really young talent that has never been exposed before. Their big break, and again, I'll use the cinematographer as an example. Those people need an extra hand. They need a little leg up or a couple introductions. And then you hope that like-minded people will see the value of their work or the beauty of their work. But yeah, but we also receive clients who are calling from other agencies who have had long, extensive careers, and we always welcome those people too.
Now we're talking to Kailey a little bit about the differences between managers and agents from her perspective as a manager.
Yes.
What's your perspective of the difference between agents and managers?
She's so cool and she's so nice. It's good.
No pressure.
It's good she's not here right now. Here's my feeling. Before I was an agent, this goes to the not really a joke about being an anti-agent. Before I was working in representation, I would deal with managers, I'd deal with agents. I really hated most of the agents I dealt with. I loved one, and he ended up being my boss briefly and brought me into the agency. But managers, this goes to an earlier thought about who actually is listening to this. I'm sure many people will raise their eyebrows. So I'll just say, I operate as an agent and a manager. Managers, there's a lot of counseling, I think, if you're a good manager. There's a lot of you are incorporating someone's life. You're incorporating what they need, what their goals are, what their family's goals are. So the difference is legally, I come from production and producing. I cannot produce as an agent in the United States. A manager is, I don't know, has everyone seen Entourage? I find there's many managers that I enjoy, but I find when it comes to deal making and the effectiveness of or strength of a deal, and this is from my perspective with my clients, an agent has always been stronger. The manager has been there more as a connector, an advisor, a psychiatrist sometimes. I kind of do both, so it's hard for me to tell the difference. When people ask me, should I have a manager? Sorry, managers. I say you should meet a lot of agents. Meet a lot of agents and see if you can find someone that services best. Because to her earlier point, 25% is a lot of money from your labor, from your salary. And, if you have the 5% for an attorney, we can't charge more than 10% legally, and nor do we. So I find the difference is I find a more personal, life-guiding side of management. I find a more hardcore deal-making element. Transactional. This is why this is your show. Exactly.
I have all the big words.
Exactly. Transactional is definitely historically more on the agent side.
How do you be a good client?
I love that. That was a good question.
That's a good question.
Great question. God. And now everyone should listen.
Take notes.
Listen up.
Honestly, and this goes to how myself and my colleagues sign. You have to work with people that are realistic. And by realistic, I mean they understand where the industry stands at the moment. It is changing every year. It's not every 5 years, every 10 years. And it's more frequent depending on what the subject is. So for me, I look for people who have realistic expectations. I have clients who come in looking for representation, and they have a great long history. They're coming from another agency, and I usually come at the end of the meeting, and this is when my team usually rolls their eyes at me because they know what I'm about to say to this person. And I say, hey, what wasn't working at blank, wherever they were? And a lot of times the answer is, well, they didn't get me a job. And I say, okay, anything else? And generally that's the answer sometimes. And I say, okay, well, we're never going to get you a job. And then that's usually when everyone's shaking their head at the other end of the table, and then the client is either shocked or gets it. And the get it is we open doors for people. We introduce them to people they've never met before. We try to follow a path and have goals and dreams and try to achieve that as a collaboration with your client. If you don't have a client who is doing some legwork on their own, not sitting on their couch waiting for the phone to ring, going out, as painful as it is, writing 5 emails a day to people they've worked with, just checking in, even saying, hey, I saw a poster for that movie we did 5 years ago, even if you didn't. Make a connection with your previous employers that you had a good relationship with. We need that. So a good client is someone who is actively involved in collaborating to get to the next step. And every person is different. Many people come and say, I'm not a good networker. That's fine. You don't have to be. But you do have to talk to people, and you have to go out, and you have to find yourself at a coffee shop, or if you're a DP, find yourself helping someone prep at Panavision or wherever they may be prepping, just to get out there and see people. Because everyone knows here that a job typically will come from someone who just saw you, who got a phone call, hey, I'm looking for a producer, boom, oh wow, I just ran into Joe Schmo, he's available, da, 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 da. So that was a long way of saying how to be a good client. Just be realistic and be helpful.
Well, and I heard own your own career.
You have to. You have to. You have to.
Do you have any final advice?
I do. I think as someone who is either starting out, someone who might be frustrated where their career sits now, or someone who's kind of on autopilot. I think this is why I enjoy what I do so much. Again, never thinking that I would be an agent, because it just came with such a stigma from what you see on TV or movies, all this. There are crazy people in every aspect of this business. It doesn't matter being an agent, being a this or being that. That being said, the advice is enjoy what you do. If you don't, this goes to the earlier point, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. People give up a lot of life things here, be it family, be it marriages, be it just friendships, relationships, hobbies. Sorry, this is going really dark, but no, but it's true.
You get all depressed.
Well, I think a lot of people sitting here, what we try to do is, I think success in this business is being able to do a great job, carry a strong reputation, but be able to do other things and talk about other things. Because there's nothing besides going home for Thanksgiving and everyone thinking I'm a director still and handing me the video camera, give it to the director. Besides that, people, you have to really, really love your day. You're going to have tough days no matter what job you do. But God, I want to wake up every day and be excited about what I do. And I think that goes for everyone. That's my only advice, is just don't give up, and you will know when it's time to leave, if it's time to leave.
That's good advice. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, I think that is a wrap for our representation episode, or Call My People. I want to thank our panelists, Jeanette Volturno, Jessica Milanofi, Matt Birch, and Kailey Marsh. And hopefully this will help you to catch a break.
This has been Catch a Break, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. And that's a wrap on Season 1 of the Catch a Break podcast. Now, we are busy getting ready for Season 2, and we're going to cover a new host of topics. Some of the ideas we're throwing around are writing, directing, inclusion and equality, creative development, work-life balance, producing, union versus non-union, acting. We've got a lot of ideas, and we want to hear from you. So reach out to us on the website, catchabreakpodcast.com, and tell us what you would like to hear. And special thanks to our intern, Akiva Nemetsky, and our consultant, Lee Schneider of Red Cup Studios. Thanks also to Audio Department, who generously provided the recording equipment, and Jean Milanofi, who designed our logo. And a big thank you to Andrew Jocelyn, who created our theme song, Mantra for a Struggling Artist, and any additional music you hear throughout. Catch a Break is produced by Jeanette Volturno, Jessica Milanofi, Marcy Brown, Rick Osako, Shirley Davis, and me, Julie Harris Walker. You can find us at catchabreakpodcast.com, and that is also where you can go to download the bonus materials. Join our mailing list so you don't miss an episode or other programs, and we want to hear from you, so reach out through the website. Again, that's catchabreakpodcast.com, and also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and we hope this helps you to catch a break.